Dable and Shane kind of need to get to a certain number of wins in order to keep their jobs going into next season. So they'll be happy if Russ is playing well and they don't even need to be confronted with this. And they can just say, hey, we're going to do the Patrick Mahomes thing where Alex Smith was our entrenched veteran starter. He's going to play for the year. If late in the season we're out of it, we'll give Dart a couple of starts, and we're off to the races. That is Jaime Eisner. I am Chris Schubert, and welcome in to the NY Sports Index. For those of you that have been followers of Jaime and I for a long time, you know we're both born and raised from New York. We decided to combine our powers and talk New York sports here on a brand new podcast. So we appreciate you joining us. And Jaime, we picked a very fun time for us to do this. We've been spending months trying to figure out what we would do together if we ever had the opportunity to create content, and here we are. We're going to talk some Jaxson Dart. We're going to talk some Justin Fields, and we're going to talk about our baseball teams. Without knowing this, I have the Mets hat on. You have the Yankees hat on for today's show. We're going to debate, I think, against each other, which team's in worse shape. We're going to talk bad about our own teams. Should be a lot of fun.
So, for those of you that might not know us, one, hello. But two, you've kind of I know there's a lot of New York related content out there, radio, podcast, TV, or whatever. But it always seems like it's always slanted one way or the other. Either it's like a Yankee show or it's a Mets show. It's a Giants show or it's a Jets show. I think what's really unique about Chris and I is our sports fandom follows those traditional lines, but just completely opposite. You know, Yankees, Giants, Rangers, you've got Mets, Jets, Islanders over there. Both of us have kind of gotten into basketball later, so we're just kind of more general basketball fans. So we are going to talk Knicks and Nets on this podcast as well.
No, let's not. Don't lie to the listeners. There's not going to be a lot of Brooklyn Nets breakdowns here on the pod.
There probably won't.
Probably won't.
You never know. They're they count. So we'll talk about them as well as we get into those seasons. But it's going to be really interesting because we've known each other for a while. We've covered sports for more than 10 years now, credentialed access for both of us. We both covered Major League Baseball, National Hockey League, the NFL, college football. I covered a little bit of college basketball. So we've done it all. We've seen it all, both in New York. We've, fans of New York teams that we spent I'm in Chicago now, you're in Arizona. So we've actually spent time with a lot of different teams in a lot of different cities. But New York is home. New York are the teams that we grew up with. That's why we're sports fanatics. But it's going to also be a really interesting podcast because we're going to bring those different perspectives, and we're going to come from it not only just from an analytical standpoint, but from opposite sides of the fandom spectrum. We'll start here with we wanted to start right before football season. So week 0 is already in the books on the college side. Week 1 will be coming up here. We're not that far away, week and a half away from the start of the NFL season and opening night, and there is some legit optimism, and I'll start on my side here, about the New York Giants right now, and some optimism that didn't exist there before, Chris.
Well, I think the interesting place, and this is where we want to start, is with one guy and one guy in particular, and that optimism may need to be delayed a little bit. We may not get that optimism in the first couple of weeks of the season, and that is because the Giants used their second first-round pick on a quarterback, Jaxson Dart, who's had a fantastic preseason, and I think the question that everybody has been kicking around is, okay, he had a great preseason. He impressed. He showed all the flashes of the player that I think the Giants thought they were getting, and maybe a little bit ahead of the curve, although it is preseason, so let's be careful. But when are we going to see him next, I think, is a more important question that everybody's asking, rather than, hey, let's preview the week 1 Giants matchup, or how are they going to do in the first couple weeks of the season? No, the big burning question surrounding this franchise right now is, when are we going to see Jaxson Dart again? And that puts this franchise, to me, in a very weird, precarious spot.
It does, and it's weird and precarious because a lot of people didn't expect this GM head coach combination to come back for the 2025 season. So you have people in positions of power right now that use the first-round pick on a quarterback, but they're also fighting for their jobs. So there's going to be a sense of, you want to always play your best players, obviously, but especially when you're potentially on the verge of being fired. But your fan base is very clearly rallying around the rookie Jaxson Dart, and not only from his on-field, but they like the off-field personality. And I think you've kind of seen this preseason, the combination of Dart, Jameis Winston, and Tommy DeVito kind of take over basically becoming the personification of what Giants fans want that team to be. And I've for those of you that know what I do for my full-time job as COO of the Draft Network, so we just came off of this draft. We did a lot of studying of all the quarterbacks, Jaxson Dart included, and he's a player that kind of got some polarizing reviews. He was somebody that the league thought a little bit more highly of than the media/draft analyst outlet, but you kind of seen so far this preseason the terms of the confidence, the swagger, the arm talent, the willingness and the confidence in his throws and his decision-making, what got NFL teams excited. But to your point, Chris, the Giants brought in a veteran quarterback in Russell Wilson. They named him the week 1 starter before training camp really even began to get into the gritty. But then you have all this hype now. And, I know, Chris, you're going to have a chart that you're going to want to reference here. But
that's right.
To me, I've been thinking about this, and I think it's interesting because I would love to see what your chart says, because the initial reaction, I feel like when you ask people when it's not going to be week 1, we know Cam Ward's starting week 1 in Tennessee. There's no questions about that. When you ask people when is the rookie quarterback going to start, what's the first thing people do?
They try to find the bye week.
They try to find the bye week. And do you know when the New York Giants bye week is?
It's early on in the campaign, if I remember correctly.
Nope, it is.
No, it's later. It's later. That's right. It's
all
later.
The way down the road. So at this point, you're kind of having to make that choice of, you don't have the easy get out of jail free card. Oh, they got a week 8 bye. They got a week 9 bye and split the season 50-50. We start Russell Wilson for 8 games. Then we give Jaxson Dart the bye week, gets an extra week to prepare and then gets to start the back. We don't get that nice, warm, fuzzy feeling. So I want to know what your chart says, because to me, I look at this and what I want to see typically is you would prefer, again, you don't know with injuries and poor performance, but you prefer a home game, right? Mm-hmm. And you prefer a home game against a non-elite defense. I think those would be the two things that you would hypothetically, in a perfect scenario, would like to stick a rookie quarterback to make their first start. And if you can't give them that extra time in the bye week.
Before I share the chart, I want to walk through the thought process that led to the chart being created. Because it feels to me, from a narrative perspective, that the Giants want to go old school, I'll put it in quotes, of waiting to start the rookie quarterback. We now live in an era where you get drafted in the first round as a quarterback, you almost have to find excuses not to start that quarterback in week 1, or at least in the first couple of weeks of the season. It's just kind of come with the territory of, if you're taken in the top 16 picks, you're probably going to start week 1. The number 1 overall pick, there's no question that Cam Ward wasn't going to start in Tennessee. It feels like the Giants are going back to the old school, hey, we're going to take a quarterback, we're going to sit him down, we're going to let him learn, we're not going to rush him, and when he's ready, when we feel he's ready, when the team is ready, that is when he is going to start. So I asked the producer of the program, Producer AI, I typed in there, hey, I want to know if my thoughts about this track with the data. So I want to know from 2005 up until last season, tell me every rookie quarterback that has started in any of those seasons. And then I want to know when they started in those seasons. So I asked Producer AI, and I gotta pull up the little chart here. And I asked AI to get this going for me. And if you're watching the video version of the podcast over on YouTube, you will see that this chart goes from 2005 all the way to 2024, and it plots all of the rookie quarterbacks that have started. And what you will notice by looking at this chart is 2005 till about 2015, 2016-ish, you have a lot of more starts happening later in the season, right? In 2007, there was a starter that made a start after week 12, their debut. 2010, after week 10. Then if you look at 2016 to 2024, it is all jammed into those first 6 weeks. Now, yes, there are outliers where guys are making starts later in the year, but the big chunk of those starts are happening in the early parts of the season. And so, Jamie, it feels like to me that the Giants are going to have to be fighting this uphill battle, because they're going to want to be patient. They're going to want to hold Jaxson Dart back until they are 100% sure that he is ready, whereas there's going to be a fan base that has just grown accustomed to the way football is right now for that guy to start. The problem is, if we want to extend this conversation out, where do you start him in the early part of the season? Because I can only find one game where you feel like it's a soft landing spot for Dart.
Yeah, and look, so if we're going to, and I hate to go back this far because the game has changed dramatically in the last 2 decades, and just in terms of the way people think about the game, the patience involved in these games, the patience involved in how play guys start and whatnot. But I'm going to go back to a situation with another SEC quarterback that the Giants drafted, with them also bringing in a veteran.
This is
going all the way back to Eli Manning.
And you're not setting yourself up well here, buddy. You're not setting yourself up well.
I'm not saying Jackson Art's winning 2 Super Bowls.
I know.
What I'm saying here is this was a scenario where they had Kurt Warner, the veteran quarterback, coming off of his run in St. Louis. That's how long ago this was. St. Louis still had a team. And you had Eli Manning, who was obviously the number 1 overall pick, the trade with the Chargers, the Phillip Rivers Manning swap, all that other fun stuff. Eli Manning didn't make his first start of the season until week 11 that year. Giants had a week 6 bye. And if people remember, Kurt Warner really, really struggled during his time with the Giants. Now, has a complete career renaissance in Arizona that we both got to view up close and personal, but Giants, Kurt Warner, not good. So the question is I don't think there's the amount of patience today with first-round quarterbacks to wait that long if Russell Wilson plays like Kurt Warner played. The elephant in the room here is, what if Russell Wilson is decent? What if he's doing fine and the team is doing fine? Is there going to be a rush to get him in? But I look right now at this schedule, there's not a lot of great spots for him. They have a stretch here, particularly if you look at October. You've got Eagles, Broncos, Eagles.
Yeah,
that's really tough defenses to throw out there.
The game that I circle, and it's the game that everybody's circling. I'm not reinventing the wheel here. Yeah. It's the Week 5 game against the Saints in New Orleans.
Yeah,
like that's the game. You start the year. You're not starting Week 1 against Washington. I don't think you're going to make a quarterback change that early into the season. So Russ is going to get, unless there's an injury, Russ is going to get at Dallas, home against Kansas City, home against the Chargers, and I can see a world where the Giants are 0-4, despite their much improved defense. There's a world where they're 0-4 to start this, and does that create enough noise to where they want to put Dart in Week 5? And then, oh, by the way, hey, buddy, right after you get a nice soft landing spot on the road in New Orleans, it's now a short week at home against Philadelphia. And then, oh, yeah, you're going to have to play them again in a couple of weeks. And so the Giants drew a really tough schedule to where, listen, the scenario you outlined where if Russ plays well, I think that's music to everybody involved's ears. There's no outside pressure. Dable and Shane kind of need to get to a certain number of wins in order to keep their jobs going into next season. So they'll be happy if Russ is playing well and they don't even need to be confronted with this. And they can just say, hey, we're going to do the Patrick Mahomes thing where Alex Smith was our entrenched veteran starter. He's going to play for the year. If late in the season we're out of it, we'll give Dart a couple of starts and we're off to the races for 2026. I think that's ideally what they would do. But you and I both know that NFL seasons very rarely go ideally, and so they're going to be confronted with this way earlier than I think they want to.
Well, and also you have to keep in mind, even in the Patrick Mahomes example, Alex Smith had a career year that year.
Alex Smith greater than signed Russell Wilson, yes, in this example.
But even maybe if you want to say they're about the same coming in, Alex Smith literally had the best year of his career that year, which obviously helped aid the elongated leash that they had for Patrick Mahomes. To me, what's ringing alarm bells for me on that is, I'm going to ask you this, Chris.
Okay.
What if they start 0-3? You got the home game against the Chargers there right before that New Orleans game. If they start 0-3, we know what we're going to – I mean, we've lived in the New York market. We know what that's going to be. We know how much pressure is on this coaching staff right now. We know how good Jaxson has looked in the preseason. We know what the noise is going to be. If they start 0-3, which is very possible, was it Washington, Dallas,
Kansas
City? I mean, that's a very possible 0-3. If Russ is just okay to not good, I would not be shocked with that home game against the Chargers if that's when the switch is made. Like, I do think it's possible that early.
And this is why it felt weird that they took a quarterback with their coach and GM so up in the air, because it feels like you're trying to walk and chew gum at the same time. And it feels like they're trying to do two things. They're trying to be decent enough to save their jobs, but also think towards the future. Well, you can't think towards the future unless you save your jobs. But guess who's not going to care about that? You and I aren't going to care about that talking about this on the pod. If the team stinks through the first couple of weeks, and Washington, Dallas, and Kansas City is not the greatest draw in the world for the first 3 weeks of the season, I can make the argument, okay, West Coast team coming east to play the early game in Week 4. You're home. You can get them a home start. Then he gets New Orleans the following week and kind of build potentially some positive momentum going into facing Philly for 2 times in 3 weeks. Because if you don't do it there, Jamie, I'm thinking Monday, week 13, you get him.
Maybe.
I know it's New England on the road, but it's a not great New England team. I don't think they're going to be very good. It's a bye week, and then it's Washington, Minnesota, Vegas, and Dallas. And who knows what Dallas is going to be that late in the year. I don't think Vegas is going to be very good. Minnesota with J.J. McCarthy is a coin toss of how good of a job Kevin O'Connell is going to be able to do. So that last chunk could be the spot if they don't do it early. But it's just, I think in order to answer this question, you have to answer another question. How good do you think Russell Wilson's going to be?
Well, exactly, because there might be a point where they just say, screw it.
They don't have a choice. They don't have a choice.
We don't care. We'll throw them in against Philly. We don't care. You know what I mean? Like, we don't care.
If Russ is 0-5 at that point, they lose in New Orleans, and Russ is actively the reason why they're losing, the noise is just going to be too much and not going to be able to avoid it.
And that's going to be the key, because it's going to be interesting. I'm actually think Russ might be okay. Like I'm
going to use one.
Okay.
I'll use one of my 3.
Okay.
What is okay in your mind?
He's not the reason they win. He's not the reason they lose. I don't think he's going to make crippling mistakes, but do I think he's going to put the team on his back and rally this team to beat teams the Giants?
No, he's not that player.
Then? No, not at this.
He hasn't been that player since Seattle.
No. What I do like, though, is that I do think we're going to unlock some different elements of this offense. We're going to actually see some deep game, which is going to be music to the ears of a few different players, particularly Darius Slayton. Maybe Jalen Hyatt if he ever decides to catch footballs. And, obviously you've got, Neighbors who's going to get a ton of targets. Wan'Dale Robinson gets a ton of targets. I think Theo Johnson could have a breakout year. But it's one of those scenarios where they play in a tough division. Mm-hmm. I think at this stage, maybe something changes during the season. I do think Dallas is vulnerable. I do think Washington is going to step back a little bit, but at this stage, the Giants are the worst team in the division. And I think it's just going to be tough, because that's why this is going to be such a difficult spot, because I don't necessarily think you're going to get the Russell Wilson absolutely just bombs. And you're like, all right, we have no other choice. I think you're going to get Russell Wilson has been okay, but man, what is the upside if we start Jaxson Dart? And at the end of the day, if Brian Daboll thinks he's going to lose his job at the end of the season, he might have to make a bold decision, and that might be starting Jaxson Dart against teams that maybe are not ideal, but like, hey, we're already 0-3, or we're already 0-4, or 1-3. We can't sit back and wait till we're 1-6 before we put this rookie quarterback in, or there's no way I'm going to save my job and have any chance anyway.
It's kind of interesting, because I think you can make the argument that for the first couple weeks of the year, starting Jaxson Dart will hurt Brian Daboll's chances of keeping his job. But if the season goes south and goes south in a hurry, playing Jaxson Dart and showing that you're the coach that can get the most out of him is the thing that could keep your job. So I know there's been this thought of they have to win a certain number of games. And while I largely agree, like if Russ is able to play well enough and he plays most of the year and they win 7 or 8 games, then I think they're going to keep Daboll and Shane and they're going to run it with Dart in 2026. Yeah. I don't think it's a certainty if they go, what would that be, 3-14, 4-13, and the last chunk of the season is Jaxson Dart looking great and Brian Daboll being a creative genius offensively. That may be enough to keep his job. Just a really weird dynamic.
Yeah, and to put a bow on this conversation, I think you're right, Chris. I think there's 3 ways he keeps his job, okay? 1, they just play good football. They have a winning record. Yeah. They play good, whatever combination. 2, he pulls the trigger on Jaxson Dart when they're not playing good football and things start to turn around. 3, he pulls the emergency brake on Jaxson Dart, and Dart looks like a megastar and the offense is clicking, and then the record doesn't matter in this year. I think
power rank those.
Let's power rank those
in the likelihood that they happen.
I think probably the second one is most likely to happen, where they pull the trigger on Jaxson Dart after a meh start from Russell Wilson. I think the second most likely one is the scenario that was the last one and the one you presented, where it's things go real south, but Jaxson Dart comes in late in the season and looks really good, and then the conversation is, do you really want to break up that combination going into next year? And then I think the third one is that this team is going to be a 10-win team with Russell Wilson starting every game. I think those are the order of likelihood.
Yeah, I don't see a world where they win double-digit games. I know their defense is supposed to be improved, and it definitely does look that way on paper. But I just think
There's
offensively,
still too many holes in this.
they're not going to be able to score enough, even with Russ playing really well.
I think regardless of if we pull Jaxson Dart's status out of this, which is tough to do because honestly long term, because we were talking about like the Brian Daboll perspective / Joe Shane perspective, but the long term perspective, this season is about getting Jaxson Dart ready to be the quarterback of the future. That's what this season's about.
It is for the franchise. It's not for the coach and the GM.
Not for them, but for the franchise. However, if we just pull that out for a second and we just want to talk strictly football, I think 8 wins would be a successful season for the Giants.
I'd agree.
I think being able to go 8-9 would be a successful season. And if you go 8-9 and Dart flashes, that's great.
I think if this team went 7-10 and Dart made 3 or 4 starts and looked good in those 3 or 4 starts, that's a successful year for the Giants.
I agree.
Let's go from one quarterback conversation to another. We'll talk about the New York Jets and their quarterback, Justin Fields. What should we make of his preseason? Only threw 9 passes, didn't throw the ball a whole lot down the field. We know what the Jets want to do offensively. We know that this team is going to run the football. Whatever a lot in your head is, probably double it, because that's how much the Jets are going to run the football. And I'm the Jets guy, so maybe I'll take the lead on this. I don't have the concerns that many have had about Fields not throwing a lot in these preseason games, Fields not throwing the ball deep down the field during what the media has been able to see in training camp, because it's just not who the Jets are going to be. I want them to be really good at what they are going to be, and the Jets have a very simple, specific game script. They're going to run the football a lot. They're going to force you into conflict with their quarterback in defending his ability to run the ball. And they're going to trust this defense to play really close, tight games. And most of the time, that game script is going to let them be in games into the second half. There are going to be games where offenses are just able to move up and down the field on them because they have elite quarterbacks and elite skill players, and the Jets will be down 17-3 or 21-7 or something like that, and they'll have to try to play catch up and throw the ball. But most of the time, I think the Jets are going to be in close games in the second half and in the fourth quarter because they're going to run the football, and they're going to say, hey, Justin, throw the ball 24 times a game, and you don't have to throw it deep down the field. Yeah. We're going to keep it extremely simple. We're going to get the ball to our playmakers. We're going to let them do the work. And so would it make me feel better about the ceiling of the team if Justin was throwing a better deep ball and he was throwing the ball more down the field? Yeah. But for what Glenn is trying to do here in year one, I think this is right on course and right on schedule with what they're trying to do.
Yeah, and it's right on course with how teams have operated with Justin Fields under center through his NFL career. You're not going to be a team that's going to throw 30-plus times a game. And now throwing 30 times a game is not that much anymore, but Jets aren't going to hit that threshold. Teams that have had Justin Fields a quarterback, whether it's been the Bears, whether it's been the Steelers, they have gone to a very run-heavy offense, both in a traditional sense and in the sense of QB RPO sense. What I'm really interested to see from Justin Fields in this is, can he operate the offense, keep it on schedule, and limit turnovers? That's been the part that's really plagued him throughout his career. And he can take over a game with his legs, not quite like Lamar Jackson, but almost like Lamar Jackson at times. The question is Lamar does it more often than not, Justin Fields pops that out 5-6 times a year. The difference is going to be can you limit the interceptions? Can you limit the fumbles when you do run? And how effective is the Jets offense going to be balancing their running back situation with Breece Hall and Braylon Allen? And right now, question marks at RB3, right? Isaiah Davis is still banged up. You got a couple undrafted rookies that are in there in camp right now that might be, seems like they're going to be more cut/practice squad type guys. That's going to be the key for the New York Jets, is can they consistently run the ball, and can Justin Fields do enough with his arm and limit the mistakes with his arm to keep this offense on schedule? And I think you and I have talked about this off camera, but I am very bearish on Garrett Wilson's counting numbers. Maybe guys like Josh Reynolds' counting numbers. I think Mason Taylor's going to be a key part of the offense, but I think he's going to be more of you're looking at the touchdowns and you are looking at receptions and yards for him. This is going to be an offense that's going to have some games where they're throwing only 22, 23, 24 times, and they're going to run the ball a ton. It's going to be a very different offense. Teams run a different offense with Justin Fields. So if you're expecting him to operate with a heavy deep ball, you expect them to throw a ton, that's not how teams have won with Justin Fields. That's not how teams have tried to play with him, and it's not how the Jets are going to try to play with him. The question is going to be, in my mind, can he do enough in that aspect to help accentuate the other elements of the Jets running game. And what's going to happen if there's injuries? What's going to happen if there's injuries on the line? What's going to happen if Hall or Allen get hurt? Are there going to be enough pieces there to run the type of offense you need to run with Justin Fields to be successful? Will they have the quantity of bodies to do that over the course of a 17-game season?
Yeah, and then there's worries of who's going to be the next receiver after Garrett Wilson, right? If teams just lock him down, you don't really love, Reynolds, Lazard. Like, they just don't have a real true number two that can help bail Fields out of those jams. I'll use a fruit analogy, right? Cincinnati throws the ball a ton, right? They don't really run the ball. Their passing game is the size of a watermelon. The Jets' passing game this year is going to be the size of a pear, an orange. Like, they're not going to have a massive passing offense for there to be a ton of volume to go around. And so, yeah, to your point, I think the numbers are going to be down for a lot of the players in that room. And we were talking about this offline, and I'll just pull it up here. A cheap plug to watch the video version of the show, because we do a lot of visual stuff, a lot of graphics that we throw up there. But these are the career numbers for Fields that I have up here. And I said this to you offline, that if you could give me the 23 passing version of Fields and the 22 rushing version of Fields, and in 23, he completed 61% of his passes, threw for 2,500 passing yards, 16 touchdowns, 9 picks. And then in 22, on the ground, he rushed for 1,100 yards, 8 touchdowns. He did fumble the ball 9 times, to your point about the turnovers. Yeah. But if you give me that passer and that runner, the Jets are going to be in almost every football game they play.
And I think it's doable. I do think it's doable. The question is going to be, can he stay on the field and long enough to do this? And by stay on the field, it's not just, the job security is there. Let's be realistic. They didn't really bring anybody in that is a major competitor to Justin Fields.
No, Tyrod's banged up, and Brady Cook looks like he's going to be QB3.
And I know there's a lot of Brady Cook hype right now for the preseason, and God bless. But for Justin, it's again, to me.
Why has Brady Cook got to catch a straight like that? What did he do?
You know why? Because I don't have anything against Brady Cook. There is sometimes these things happen in the preseason where guys that just are not going to make an impact just get gassed up by people, and
of course
people get unrealistic expectations.
Jamie, we're jonesing for football. We're looking for anything, man. We're looking for anything.
You tell me. I've sat there. I was watching Sam Houston State and who'd they play yesterday? Whoever I did, I bet the over on it. Whatever it was.
Did you win?
I was watching Stanford, Hawaii. Did you know they had a 29-year-old freshman punter?
A cheap plug for your Twitter account. I saw you tweet this. I did not know this before you put out the tweet.
And their kicker is from Japan, who learned how to kick from YouTube tutorials, and he kicked the game winner.
And apparently, from what I saw, I think it was Stuart Mandel who tweeted this. He learned English by going to a JUCO college.
Yeah, in Ohio, some random place in Ohio.
I don't know how much college we'll talk on this show, but that's just some crazy stuff.
Yeah,
that goes on
the Northeast is not the mecca of college football anymore, like it was in like the early 1900s. But anyway, yes. So I get that. But for Fields, to me, it's, can you limit the turnovers? Because what's taking him off the field is constant fumbles, poor interceptions. Like, that stuff is caused people to say, we got to do something else. And I don't think Aaron Glenn is going to have a high tolerance level for that, just knowing the type of person he is. So if he can just clean up the negative plays, there is an avenue for him to be this borderline 3,000-yard passer, borderline 900-yard rusher, and be a key part to this Jets offense. There's also, though, unfortunately, still a slither of a path for this to be a complete disaster. And so what you're hoping is that it leans into as he has matured in his career, and quite frankly, players that like playing with him. Like, they really do. There was a lot of conversation coming out of Pittsburgh when Justin Fields didn't get a chance to start again. Like, there was a lot of and there were a lot of players that wanted him back in Pittsburgh, particularly over Aaron Rodgers. So that part's good, that he can be a leader of a team, but he's got to stop the negative plays, and he's got to stay healthy.
I think there are two things that would lead me more towards the optimistic route. This is probably the best offensive line. No, I won't say probably. This is the best offensive line that he's played behind in his career, and I think it is probably the best offensive coaching staff that he's had around him. That's going to make sure to put him in positions to succeed.
I mean,
and that's crazy to say about a first-year offensive coordinator. Right. It's a first-year coordinator who's clearing that bar, but think of who he had calling plays for him in Chicago. Think about the offensive setup in Pittsburgh. Like, maybe the personnel isn't what it was in those other two spots, but it definitely feels like from an infrastructure perspective, he's better set up than he's ever been in his career.
I am curious. To me, this is where I find out what the Jets do around him, because there is a guy, and you could tell me, my sense is that he's not going to make the 53.
Okay.
But I want your thoughts. Is a guy that really intrigues me that I think would really help Justin Fields, and that's Donovan Edwards. I think his long-term career is more as a gadget slot type of receiver than as a pure running back. But I think he could be a really strong outlet for Justin Fields in scenarios where they get down a back late. Like, you're not playing him over Braylon Allen and Breece Hall, but there are some interesting guys that the Jets have, that are kind of hanging around the periphery of that roster right now. Even a guy like Arian Smith, for example, at wide receiver. Again, these are more gadgety type guys than traditional, whatever the position listed next to them role is, but they do feel like they're a playmaker short, to your point. Like, it does feel like, I understand you're not bringing in another high-profile wide receiver right now, but I feel like you can do better than Josh Reynolds and Alan Lazard and Xavier Gibson and some of these other guys for your wide receiver too. I wonder if they're going to be active in the waiver market as these cuts get made. Not that you're necessarily going to find a star at that point, but I think they're a weapon short on this offense, but I do like Mason Taylor a lot. I thought he was a guy that could potentially even sneak into the first round of the draft this past April. I think he's going to be an impactful player. Garrett Wilson, I love. I worry about the volume in this offense, but as just a pure football perspective, Garrett Wilson is a stunningly great receiver. I just feel like they're just a piece short for what they need in this offense.
Yeah, I wonder how much of a role they're going to carve out for Arian Smith, their fourth-round pick from this past year's draft. They seem to really like him, and I could see a world where he replaces one of the veterans, whether it's Lazard or Tyler Johnson or Josh Reynolds in this offense. And then about Edwards, it's just he's RB5, and it's just hard for me to see a path when the three of the four guys in front of him are going to be part of the running back rotation, and then the one guy directly in front of him may be the punt returner, maybe the kick returner, and play a big role in special teams. That's the problem.
Edwards is not really a special teams guy.
Right.
As you know, when you're on that roster bubble, like that's going to be a disqualifier. Although, again, Isaiah Davis doesn't do much for me either on that front. Again, I know
he did a little bit of it in college, but the Jets have not really asked him to do a ton of it.
No, to me, this team, what scares me is I feel like they're like one injury at any spot away from being really thin.
Yeah, of course.
You know what I mean? Of like
one
100%.
Running
back injury, one receiver injury, one.
Well, it depends on who you ask.
Really thin.
There. You're going to learn this as we do this pod. There are some Braylon Allen truthers out there that want him to be
Allen a lot.
The RB1 on this team, and then for them to trade Breece. But
I like Braylon Allen a lot, but I understand that this offense is going. Here's what let me pull up my numbers. I predict that this offense. I'll give you an exact number here. Because for those of you that have followed me before, I do projections for fantasy and for betting purposes, which we will use that on the show. We want to talk about that when we get closer to week one and provide you with some really good prop stuff that from a formula that Chris and I tested out last year.
Worked pretty well.
Gave
Worked
really
pretty
good
well.
Results. And we'll share all that information with you as we get it when we get past this first episode. But right now I have the Jets running 31.3 times per game. That is the third most in the NFL, behind Philadelphia, and Baltimore.
Yeah,
duh.
Yeah.
So you're going to be relying, and to be fair, I think you're going to see more total attempts from the quarterback in both of those teams. So you're going to be getting a lot of running back touches, and I think there's plenty of room for both those guys to eat. My concern is what happens when one of them rolls an ankle.
Yeah, I mean, that's going to be the real big question mark.
Are you going to give 15 touches a game to Isaiah Davis while one of them's hurt? Like, is that winning football? That's my concern. God forbid something happens to Garrett Wilson and he misses a week. Who the hell are you throwing the ball to? Like, it just feels like this team is on the precipice of like, man, we're one injury from Breece or Braylon or Wilson or Mason Taylor. Like, one of those injuries feels like it'll be crippling to this offense.
If Garrett Wilson got hurt and missed time, teams would just play man on the outside and load the box.
Of course. Why wouldn't you?
Right. Josh Reynolds beats me. Tyler Johnson beats me. beats me. Like
they don't have difference makers in the other
Yeah.
spots. And
That's-
I understand not everybody's going to have a replacement for a Garrett Wilson type player. It's just to me they're just like we want to talk about for the Giants, for example. If Malik Neighbors got hurt, it would absolutely really hurt that offense. However, they've still got Wandale underneath. They can go deep with Darius Slayton. You still got Tracy and Scatterbo who can catch the ball in the backfield. You have two tight ends. You know what I mean? If Tyrone Tracy goes down, you've got Cam Scatterbo. You've got you know what I mean? It's not necessarily about who's better. It's just about the Jets are going to run the ball a lot, and they're going to rely. They're going to need two running backs to basically be starting caliber for them all season long, and they only have two of those guys on the roster right now.
It is going to be a fascinating case study in going all in on your scheme and just believing that scheme and that game script is going to lead you to success, because they're betting on their coaching, they're betting on their culture, they're betting on the pieces that they have, because they are one injury away from it feeling like they need an entirely new scheme, because teams are just going to load the box against them and say, hey, you're going to get 2 yards a carry. Good luck trying to throw the ball down the field. Because you're going to be 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9 a bunch.
And that's my concern. But again, the positive part here is that
when it works,
I think Glenn's a damn good coach.
When it works scheme-wise, this team is going to win games.
Well, what Aaron Glenn was able to do at times with a defense that's not nearly as talented as what the Jets have in Detroit was impressive. Like the Jets are going to play classic defense, shorten the game on offense, and when everybody's healthy and when optimal, I think they can run it very well. But the problem is again, I don't think they have a lot of depth if something goes wrong to continue to run that very well. And I think if something goes wrong, it's an easy scheme to fight against when it's not running optimally.
Jaime, it's the New York Jets. Everything goes according to plan. Everything goes the way that it's supposed to.
The Jets have never had any issues. You're right. Good,
never.
Good call.
They've never had an injury happen in the first week of a very important season. I mean, come on. Nothing to worry about.
No one's carried the flag for that team and got hurt.
We have gone 37 minutes here, and we haven't talked about either of our baseball teams.
I could go 137 more without talking about my team.
So just as a quick programming note, we are recording this show before Sunday Night Baseball.
Before the Yankees get swept. Okay, so right now I'm going to predict the future, and I'm going to say we're recording this right before Sunday Night Baseball, by the way.
Like within an hour of Sunday Night Baseball.
Yeah. We're baseball. It starts in an hour. The Yankees will lose their 4th game in a row against the Red Sox. And
no, it's more than that. It's not 4th. It's like 9, right?
Oh no, you're right. I'm sorry. I just meant like they'll lose their 4th game in a row, and it happens to be against the Red Sox.
Yeah,
no, they've lost more than that against the Red Sox.
Yeah, it'll be 9 if they lose tonight's game.
So let me see. When's the last time they beat Boston? I scroll through I'm doing a lot of scrolling. It's a little scary how much scroll. June 6th.
That's more than 2 months ago. That's more than 2 months ago. Cool. Well, maybe they'll win. Maybe they'll win, and this entire bit will look foolish.
Yeah,
Who's starting tonight? I don't even know.
I came into this series. No, this is not the segment at all, but I'm just going to.
No, do whatever you want.
Part. I came into the series and I was feeling good. The Yankees were playing good baseball. Yet I was like, they're going to get swept by the Red Sox. I've never felt more confident they were going to get swept by the Red Sox. And then they come out and they're going to get swept by the Red Sox. And as we said before the show, it's going to suck. Calvarez hit 2 home runs today, so they're going to steal the MVP again from Judge, just like they stole it from him his rookie year. So there's going to be they're going to go to the wild card game. They're going to lose. Brian Cashman's going to come out and be like, we lost Cole for the year. We lost Judge here a little bit. Like, what are we supposed to do? We'll get him next year and nothing will change. And they won't have an MVP to even salvage a little bit of the season. They won't have anything. They'll embarrass themselves on national TV once again. Anthony Volpe will be making errors in January somehow. I don't even know how he's going to do it. He's just going to be like in the fall league somehow and making errors. It's just bad. So I'm sorry. It's just bad.
So does that mean the answer to the question for this segment of who do we feel worse about, Mets or Yankees? Your answer is the Yankees. Is that what you?
Yeah. I mean, look, I understand what you might say. I understand that the Mets haven't lived up to expectations this stretch here. This is a whole different. I imagine what this conversation was 3 months ago. By the way, it's a whole completely different conversation.
Yeah, right. We were dreaming of a Subway Series between these two teams.
But and I understand that you can make the argument that the path to winning a World Series through the National League is significantly harder this year than the path to winning the World Series through the American League. Totally agree with that. The thing is despite what some Mets fans might do to their glasses on social media, the Yankees are embarrassing. Like, they're an embarrassing team. The Mets are losing games at times. So they've won a little bit lately. But, I mean, the Mets lose sometimes. But, like, the Yankees are embarrassing, right? Like, they're going, like, the Yankees are losing and they're spitting in your face while they're losing, where the Mets are just losing.
There's some overlap between the two teams. Both teams have had trouble with their starting pitching. Both teams have an offense that is inconsistent. And there is, this is the nice way to phrase it, an occasional bullpen meltdown between the two sides. So
it's not so occasional on our side of town, I'll tell you what.
In that regard, the two teams are very similar, right? They have some of the same problems. The difference is, I feel like when I watch the Yankees, they don't do the little things right. Like, they don't do the defense right. They don't do the base running right.
They don't play baseball well.
Right. And I feel like the Mets
play baseball well.
If we look at all three of those things, right? Bad starting pitching, inconsistent offense, and the occasional bullpen meltdown, I feel more confident in the Mets' answers to those. McClain, Diaz in the bullpen, Vientos and McNeil starting to hit really well. Like, I can see answers for all three of the ways out for those problems for the Mets. Whereas for the Yankees, I can't tell you how many times I turn on the Yankee game and I got to watch Devin Williams in a really key spot, and Aaron Boone hasn't learned his lesson.
Well, and that's the thing, too. It's like, look, pitching is notoriously streaky.
Sure. So it's hitting. Both are.
Sure. But, like, you're going to have bullpen blow-ups. You're going to have starters that look right. Like, Max Fried looked like his Cy Young candidate. He struggled lately. Although he was fine in his last start, the Yankees just decided they didn't want to score that day. But that happens over the course of the season. The bullpen decisions that are being made by Aaron Boone, some of the times he's brought in, let's say, Yerry De Los Santos, the continued insistence on putting Devin Williams in any sort of a leverage scenario ever, the mistakes that were made with the reverse splits with Jake Bird before he got between the very brief time between when they traded for him, when they sent him down to AAA. All of these things are just frustrating, but so is the fact that they have a shortstop that can't play the position anymore, can't hit, and they continue to coddle him like he's a small child that they birthed themselves. And then you have scenarios where you have your manager coming out and saying, oh, man, I don't think Aaron Judge is going to be able to throw right the rest of the season. Then you have Aaron Judge coming out saying, I don't know why the hell he said that.
That was so...
The second time this year, Judge has come out and publicly rebuked something that Aaron Boone directly said.
And the Yankees are buttoned up. They're buttoned up. Those things don't happen. And to have your star player, and Judge normally will take the high road, and Judge normally probably wouldn't correct to that level.
And right. Chris, I don't know if you've seen, but there's been a lot of conversation these last couple of days about whether or not Aaron Judge needs to be tougher publicly on the team. Mm-hmm. So more often than not, he takes the high road to almost a sickening level of just like, he's having a different conversation in the room, but he's not going to throw anybody under the bus publicly. And he's done it to Aaron Boone twice this year.
It is so stark when it happens because the Yankees are so buttoned up and things normally are paint by numbers. They just operate the way that they're supposed to. I did not tell you I was going to do this, but I have one more graphic I want to share.
Oh boy.
And I want to get your thoughts to these numbers because some are good, some are bad. This is courtesy of Buster Olney. Some Yankees metrics. There's 5 of them in total. The Yankees infielders have combined for 33 throwing errors, 8 more than any other team. The Yankees have made 28 outs on the bases, which is tied for the fewest with the Dodgers in baseball. Yep. They have a negative 1.5 base running metric, BSR, which ranks 17th in the majors. They've allowed 50 unearned runs this year. The MLB average is 47. The Yankees are plus 24 in defensive runs saved, 14th among the 30 teams, and they have a 71.2 defensive efficiency rating, which is 6th best in baseball. So some things in there that you're like, oh, they're not that bad. And then there are others where, no, they're downright awful.
So this is really interesting because I think this is where, and obviously we're both analytics guys, but this is where I think there's context to these things matters. And I think not every play, not every error, not every base running mistake, not every base running success story weighs the same or is in the same situation. So, for example, let's talk about some of these things here. Obviously, we know about the throwing errors. Look, errors are looked at as a component. They're not looked at as highly in terms of how you rate defenses that was before. We have a lot of other metrics. We've got biometrics and things of that nature now. The idea that the Yankees made 28 hours on the bases, which is tied with the Dodgers for the fewest. They have minus 1.5 baser, which ranks 17th. Okay, so let's talk about that for a second. It's not that the Yankees are making a stupendous amount of outs on the bases.
I know what you're going to say.
They make the stupidest outs on the bases. If there was an out per or a stupid per out metric, the Yankees would lead the league in that.
So it's not just
the Yankees are very good at going, let's say, first to third and going second to home because they've got good base runners like Cody Bellinger. Paul Goldschmidt runs the bases really well. Jason Dominguez runs the bases well. Volpe's got some speed, and he, when he is not off in the clouds, does run the bases well. So it makes sense to me that they're not making a ton of outs on the bases and that they're kind of around average because they do a lot of those little things that go into some of the base running metrics, like, again, first to third, second to home, first to home on a double, things like that are not really box score stats. They do those things well. However, the mistakes that they do make on the bases,
they're catastrophic.
more often than not, are not, hey, we're trying to be aggressive and take an extra base. Hey, we're going to try to steal to put a guy in a game-winning position or in scoring position. They're getting picked off on second base because they're thinking about roadblocks or something. And you have guys leaving early to go, like not knowing where the ball is on the field. You have guys, you have like the Jazz Chisholm play where he's trying to like think in 4D chess. What if Xavier Edwards drops this ball and then wants to try to double us up? So that's the stuff that's annoying. It's not that they're fundamentally unable to run the bases well. They do a lot. I keep saying do a lot.
You have. I have really done a nice job of not making the dad joke.
They do enough of those little things well. The problem is they make the errors that you would expect to make in like a 10-year-old's little league game. Errors that are inexcusable for Major League Baseball players. That's what the frustrating part is. It's not that they can't run the bases. It's that they are making mistakes that are almost unfathomable at this level of baseball.
Well, and I think I can only talk about this from my perspective. What it seems to me drives Yankees fans up a wall is the lack of accountability when these things happen. That there's just this sort of nonchalant, oh, no, everything's okay, everything's fine.
It's all out in front of us, Chris.
It's all out in front of us. We're going to get after it, you know? All of the Aaron Boone-isms that you hear from him on a pretty regular basis. And I think that's what frustrates everybody more than the actual mistakes themselves. The mistakes themselves make you want to rip your hair out, but it's just the lack of accountability for those mistakes over and over and over again. Listen, if a player who hasn't made a mistake all year makes a blunder, we don't need to crucify that guy in the media. But when it's Volpe, who's made his 400th error this season, perhaps you don't make it seem like it's just another Tuesday and we can just move on with our lives.
Which, by the way, speaking of Volpe, he's now down to the 18th percentile in fielding run value. Just ridiculous. But so to go on, let's go back to point number 4 here. The Yankees are plus 24 in defensive run saves, 14th among the 30 teams.
So middle of the road.
So I also think that people don't understand the Yankees have a lot of really good defenders on their team. Aaron Judge is a corner outfielder, is an elite right field defensively. Trent Grisham is really good in center. Cody Bellinger, no matter where you put him, has been really good. Jazz at second is good. Jazz at third is a disaster, but Jazz at second is good. You know what I mean? You've gotten some really good framing. You can argue that blocks and some other stuff, but the Yankees have gotten really good framing from Austin Wells. So you have things around the team that are really good. But once again, they make a lot of mistakes. And you've made a lot of mistakes at shortstop. You've made a lot of mistakes in left field. And you've made a lot of mistakes at third base. It's calmed down now with Ryan McMahon out there. But that has been the issue, is more so that not that they don't have the players, it's that it's been a Jekyll and Hyde of you've got some really good defenders and you've got some dudes that look like they can't be out there, including a guy that I love, and Jason Dominguez, who looks like he might as well be on Mars when he's playing in left field. So yes, when you look at the all-encompassing statistics, they scream more average than the Yankees should be playing in AAA. But the mistakes that they are making are so egregious that that's what hurts. Like, there is a level of mistakes. You're going to make errors. So the question is are you going to be Ellie De La Cruz with the errors, or are you going to be what Anthony Volpe is this year? Where you take the errors with De La Cruz because he has such great range, he's got a great arm, and he's going to try to make plays that most players won't even have an opportunity to make, and he's going to make some errors there. But at the end of the day, he's going to provide you plus value. That's not what they're getting from Anthony Volpe and stuff this year. That's not what they're getting from their left fielders for the most part, unless it's been Bellinger out there. It's not what they got from third baseman before Ryan McMahon was there. So I get the statistics make them look average, but for a team that was supposedly going to fix these issues that the whole world saw in the World Series, it ain't happening.
We should probably touch a little bit on the Mets. We spent a lot there talking about the Yankees and their problems because the Mets have their fair share.
I'm not as mad about the Mets.
Well, I get pretty frustrated with the bullpen in particular because the options that they have are the ones that they sought out to get at the deadline to build this super bullpen. And it feels like the number of options that Carlos Mendoza can trust on a regular basis is one guy, and it's Edwin Diaz. Ryan Helsley cannot be in a high leverage situation. The other night in Atlanta, they had a 12-2 lead, and Helsley and Reed Garrett combined to make it a 12-7 final. I can't trust you in a one-run game if I can't trust you in a 12-2 game. And Gregory Soto gave it up today in the series finale against Atlanta. So a guy that had been perfect basically since getting here, he's now got a blemish on his record. Rogers is good, just not great. I mean, he's a solid option, but I don't think he's somebody that you're going to trust every single night. And it just feels like Carlos Mendoza has to get some of these guys back in a good frame of mind, right? Helsley seems to be in his own head. Reed Garrett has been in his own head for a little bit. I mean, Ryan Stanek isn't going to touch a medium to high leverage situation for the rest of the season. It feels like he's on borrowed time. So it just feels like that is a house of cards that is tumbling. The starting pitching looks like it's turned a corner. McLean's been great since coming up. Holmes gave them 6 innings. Peterson gave him 8 innings earlier in the week. So it feels like that's kind of solved itself. And they have Jonah Tong and Brandon Sproat, who I'm going to talk about here in a minute with my final word. There's options there. Offensively, Vientos is breaking out. McNeil's playing really well. Unfortunate that Alvarez goes down because he was swinging the bat well. They're just Soto's got 105 walks on the season. He's being great. Lindor's been awesome the last month. Beatty's been great. I know you just picked him up in fantasy on a recommendation from me earlier today. A lot of good things going offensively and with the starting pitching, whereas there's less so with the bullpen. And unfortunately, you're going to play a lot of close games this time of year, and you just have to be able to manage them like they're playoff games. And I just don't know if Carlos Mendoza can be 100% confident that he can do that.
Yeah, and both teams are sitting here right now in kind of the same spot. The third team in the wild card, the Mets will be about a game and a half up heading in by the time tonight's over. Yankees, we'll see. Could be 2.5, could be 3, or 2 or 3, depending on how things end up going. Obviously, the Mariners are still playing. Right, the Mariners are going to win, so they'll be tied. So it's either going to be 2 or 3 games up. It's just, to me, when I look at the Mets versus when I look at the Yankees, I think the Mets' issues can be fixed with a good run, with a good week of kind of getting things back together. I think the Yankees' issues are more permanent for the rest of the season. I feel like the things that I expect both teams to make the playoffs. I expect both teams to be a wild card team. But I don't feel like the Yankees' issues are correctable at this point. They tried to correct it with a lot of the bullpen ads that they've made. Outside of Bednar, they haven't worked so far. Their defensive issues aren't going to get any better. Their managerial issues aren't going to get any better. Their usage issues of the bullpen isn't going to get any better. Where I feel like the Mets have a pathway here to where I don't know. I feel like the Mets are just more traditionally doing the things of they're kind of in a lull stretch right now. That's baseball. Where I feel like everything the Yankees are doing is what they deserve in a weird way.
That's fair.
And so, but when I look at this Mets team, I still think that lineup, when everybody's clicking, can win a playoff series. I still think you've got the pitching, if people are healthy, to win a playoff series. I can't say the same for New York, the other New York team right now.
No, that's fair. And I would agree with that. Although the counter to that, for at least me, would be that the Mets obviously have a harder road in the National League with the Reds breathing down their neck. They have so many tough games. 16 of their 25 games in September are against teams with winning records. So that could be what does them in. But I would agree that the Mets have more in-house solutions where I don't mean to just boil it down to this very simple statement, but just their good players need to play better. And
Yes.
if they do that, they're fine. Whereas the Yankees, there feel like there's more infrastructure problems than there are. The players just need to play better.
I think the Yankees are fundamentally flawed. I think the Mets are in a lull. And I think that I know that's an oversimplification of what's happening, but I think that's the issue now. They might end up finishing with a similar record. They might end up finishing in the same wild card spot. Hell, they might finish with the same playoff finish. However, if you ask me right, I mean, look, the reality is it's easier to come out of the AL than it is the NL. I can't debate that. But if you were to flip leagues, let's just play a Freaky Friday here, and the Mets were in the AL in the same spot the Yankees are, and the Yankees were in the NL in the same spot the Yankees are, I would have way more confidence in the Mets to run through the American League than I do right now than I do the Yankees.
Yeah, and I think right now, as things stand here today, and I'm feeling better after the Mets went to Atlanta and took 2 out of 3, I probably would have had a different tune after losing 2 out of 3 to Washington earlier this week. Yeah. So if we were doing the pod last week, it may have been a different tone. But yeah, I think I would overall agree with that statement. All right, before we get out of here, at the end of every episode, we're each going to have our final word. So maybe it's a topic that we didn't get to throughout the course of the show, but something that each of us want to address. You know what, Jamie? I'll be a good co-host, and I'll let you go first.
You'll let me go first, huh?
Yeah.
I want to just actually touch on something, a little bit of what we've already talked about, but I want to take a different spin on it, and it's the Anthony Volpe conversation. I think we've reached a point, and there was a large conversation over the weekend on Yankees Twitter about this as well, and I'm in agreement with the groupthink on this, which is the Yankees have put an undue amount of extra spotlight on Anthony Volpe and his struggles by continuing to shoo-shoo them, by continuing to coddle him, by continuing to say nothing is wrong, by continuing to say, I think he's just as good, or Aaron Boone acting surprised when somebody brings up Volpe's struggle. Like, oh, what do you mean he's been struggling? It is putting fans in a position where they are turning on the player instead of trying to rally behind that player to get back to where they were. And there is no doubt that pretty much every aspect of Anthony Volpe's game has regressed this year. Everything. And I talked about this on the previous podcast that was on this channel. You could probably go scroll through the YouTubes and see my Anthony Volpe rant. But you can see where I talked about how, I know he won the Gold Glove as a rookie, but he was actually better defensively last year. And now he is one of the worst defensive shortstops in Major League Baseball. He's one of the worst bats in Major League Baseball. He's one of the worst hitters with runners in scoring position in Major League Baseball. He is the worst in terms of fielding errors in Major League Baseball. And it's late August now. The season's almost over. You can't say sample size. You can't say it's a bad stretch. You can't say it's the yip. You can't say any of that. He's fundamentally flawed right now. And the Yankees' insistence on digging their head in the sand and is not addressing it. And by the way, it's not just addressing it in the media. It's addressing it with the player. Chris, did the New York Mets have a highly touted prospect that had been in the league for a couple years, that they had to send down to kind of get things right, to at least try to get things right? Did that happen to the New York Mets anytime recently?
In fact, it happened in the year 2025.
It did, didn't it, with Francisco Alvarez?
Yeah.
The Yankees refuse to do it with Volpe. They won't sit him down multiple games. They won't send him down. And the publicly won't even address that there's a problem. There's no problem. Everything's great. Everything's fine. Volpe, and it's not only is it hurting the team, not only is it hurting the fans' trust in the organization, it's hurting the fans' trust in the player. And it's causing a lot of backlash against the human being that is Anthony Volpe. And yes, I understand that players need to be accountable for their own bad play. But organizations need to be accountable for helping those players try to improve in areas that they're struggling. And the Yankees' complete refusal to do that is not only hurting them on the field, it is potentially poisoning any chance that this fan base will ever accept Anthony Volpe as a starting caliber player for the New York Yankees ever again.
My final word, also baseball related. I want to talk about something that is accustomed to being a New York Mets fan, and that is starting pitching and young starting pitching developing through the system. First, it was Doc Gooden in the 80s. It was Generation K that the Mets had in the 90s. It was Syndergaard and Wheeler and Harvey and DeGrom. And now we've seen the start of it, but it is a new crop of starting pitchers for the New York Mets. Nolan McLean has made 2 starts for this team and has looked every bit as advertised as one of the top prospects in the game. 2 more prospects that are waiting in the wings in Jonah Tong and Brendan Sproat, who we could see here at any moment down the stretch to help this team. And don't forget about a prospect that was here last year in Christian Scott. This is a reminder that the Mets are continuing to build the way that they have always been built, pitching first, and then they supplement with the hitters later. And so even in a year that maybe is missing the mark expectation-wise, when you spend $700+ million on Juan Soto, a team that might not win the division, that they might not make the playoffs, or if they get in there as a wild card team, you don't expect them to go very far. The future is very bright, and we're seeing it on display with first Nolan McLean and with Jonah Tong and Brendan Sproat right around the corner, but don't forget about Christian Scott as well. So wanted to make sure we shouted out the next crop of Mets starters that every day it's are they calling up Jonah Tong? Have they called up Brendan Sproat? And that buzz, that excitement of having players that feel like they're major league ready and they're right there ready to help you is a cool feeling that a lot of fan bases, it takes a while to fill up your minor league system. And the Mets have it on the positional side as well with Jet Williams and Carson Benj, but it feels like all the attention right now is on the pitchers, and rightfully so.
Yeah, I think we saw a little report yesterday to come out about that Tong might actually play for the big league club this year.
Tong is leapfrog Sproat, I think, as the next in line for this team, and would probably follow diehard baseball fans the Bubba Chandler route, who's in now for Pittsburgh. He's a starting prospect, but they're using him as a reliever here down the rest of the season, and I could see the Mets doing the same thing with Jonah Tong. That is going to do it for us here, the first edition of the NY Sports Index. We didn't mention this at the top, probably shame on us. 3 times a week you'll be hearing from us in the podcast feed.
The name of the podcast at the top.
I did. No.
Okay.
No, you can go back and listen. I made sure to mention the name of the pod, so I at least got that in there. I said both of our names, so we're good in that regard.
I remember mine. I heard my name. That's all I cared about.
Of course you did.
Everything else was just blah, 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 Charlie Brown.
3 times a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, usually will be our release days, maybe some bonus episodes, some emergency episodes if things happen that warrant an emergency pod. Video version on the NY Sports Index YouTube channel and in the podcast feed wherever you get your podcast. Just search the NY Sports Index. We appreciate you joining us, being a part of this journey. This is going to be a lot of fun for Jamie and I. Perhaps maybe not as angry as we were at our baseball teams today. The next time we talk, who knows what will happen, but we'll talk to you guys later in the week. Have a good one.